Picture this. It's 9 p.m. on a Friday. You're tired. You don't want to cook. So you grab your phone, open your favorite delivery app, scroll through the pictures of glossy, perfectly lit food, the sesame chicken glistening under studio lights, the burger stacked so high it looks like architecture, and you tap order. 45 minutes later, a bag lands at your door. You dig in. And here's what nobody told you. The moment that food left the kitchen, you lost the only tool you had to protect yourself, your eyes. You cannot see the cutting board that never got washed between the raw chicken and your salad. You cannot see the grease buildup coating the inside of the fryer that hasn't been deep cleaned in 3 weeks. You cannot see the cook who showed up sick because his manager told him if he called out, he'd lose his shift. You cannot see any of it. But here's the thing. The kitchen always leaves fingerprints. Not literal fingerprints, though honestly, sometimes those too, but evidence. Clues, signals that travel right alongside your food from the moment it's packed to the moment it lands on your table. Most people just don't know what they're looking at. That grease soaking through the bottom of the bag, that's not just messy. That tells you something specific about how that kitchen operates. The food that's somehow already lukewarm after a 20-minute delivery, that's not just bad luck. That's a window into temperature control failures that health inspectors specifically flag as critical violations. The container that looks like it was sealed, opened, and resealed, that's not paranoia. That's a pattern that ex-employees have talked about in court documents and Reddit threads for years. We did the research. We went through health inspection reports, employee testimonies, food science studies, and the first-hand accounts of professional cooks who pulled back the curtain on exactly what's happening in kitchens you'll never walk into. And what we found is this. Your delivery order is basically a report card on that kitchen. You just have to know how to read it. Today, we're going to teach you how to read it. 8 red flags, 8 things to look for before you take a single bite. And for each one, we're going to tell you exactly what it means. Not the surface explanation, but the real reason it happens, what it says about how that kitchen operates, and in several cases, what it's actually connected to in terms of documented food safety failures. Stay with us through all 8, because number 7, that one's the one most people never think about, and it's one of the most consistent indicators health inspectors and ex-kitchen workers point to when they're describing a place that's operating in the danger zone. Let's get into it. Red flag 1, sticky or dirty bags and containers. You picked up the bag and it felt wrong, slightly tacky, maybe a smear of something near the handle. Maybe the container is greasy on the outside in a way that has nothing to do with what you ordered. You told yourself, it's just delivery, things happen in transit, bags get bumped around. That's what they're counting on you telling yourself. Here's the truth. The outside of your container is the last surface a human being touched before your food left that kitchen. It's the final link in a chain that started with raw ingredients and ended with whoever packed your order. And that chain was either clean or it wasn't. The bag is the evidence. A kitchen running correct sanitation procedures does not produce dirty packaging, not because they're being careful with the bag specifically, but because the cleanliness is systemic. Clean hands, clean stations, clean packing surface. The bag comes out clean as a byproduct of everything else being clean. When the bag comes out dirty, it's the same reason. It's a byproduct of everything else being dirty. This is the part the industry hopes you won't connect. That smear on the outside of your container, it came from a hand. That hand had been somewhere before it touched your bag. If that hand was clean, properly washed between tasks, the way every health code in every state requires, your bag would not look like this. The smear is the evidence of the skip. Someone skipped the hand wash, which means they skipped it for your bag, which means they skipped it for the food inside the bag, which means they skipped it for every order before yours. The CDC puts 48 million Americans sick from foodborne illness every year. Health agencies list the single most preventable cause: contact transmission.
Hands that touched raw protein, touching surfaces that touch your food. It's not a mystery. It's not complicated. It's just not being enforced in thousands of delivery kitchens operating right now, tonight, packing orders for people who are telling themselves it's just delivery and things happen. And here's what makes this worse. The delivery platform showing you a 4.7-star rating for this restaurant, that rating is driven by whether the food tasted good, whether the order was correct, and whether it arrived fast. It has nothing to do with whether the kitchen is clean. Nothing. You can run a filthy kitchen and maintain a 4.7 on every app indefinitely because the people eating your food don't get sick until later, and when they do, they don't connect it to the delivery they had 3 days ago. The platform never finds out. The rating never moves. You are the only quality control that exists in this chain. The bag is your inspection.
For anyone with a food allergy, this flag is not optional reading. If a kitchen isn't running clean packing procedures, it isn't running clean allergen separation either. The residue on the outside of your container came from somewhere. A kitchen that lets that happen is a kitchen that lets cross-contact happen. The difference between a stomach bug and anaphylaxis is not the kitchen's competence level. It's your immune system's response. Same kitchen, same failure, different consequence. What to do? Before you open anything, look at the outside of every container. Visible grease, sticky film, smeared residue. Take a picture, flag it in the app. One report does nothing. 100 reports from the same kitchen gets it reviewed. You're not complaining about aesthetics. You're creating a paper trail for a kitchen that is actively failing sanitation standards. Do it every time. Take 30 seconds. It matters. Red flag 2, food that arrives lukewarm when it should be hot. Here's a number that the delivery industry would rather you never knew. 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the minimum temperature the law requires for hot food being held for service. Not when it's cooked, when it's sitting, when it's waiting in the container, when it's in the staging area waiting for a driver. Below 140, bacteria multiply. That's not a warning, that's microbiology. It happens whether anyone is watching or not. Your food arrived lukewarm. You ate it. The industry's explanation is delivery takes time, food cools, that's just how it works. And sometimes that's true. A soup that was packed at 165 and traveled 40 minutes in an uninsulated bag in November will arrive at a different temperature than a soup packed at 165 in a properly sealed thermal bag in a direct delivery. Transit matters. But here's what they don't say. In most cases, the food that arrives lukewarm was not packed hot. It was packed warm because it had been sitting in a warmer on a shelf in a holding tray since before your order was even placed. You paid for something made to order. What you received was something made hours ago and held in conditions that nobody at that kitchen is checking. This is how ghost kitchens operate at scale. The whole model depends on batch cooking, making large quantities of an item in advance and dispatching it as orders come in. Done correctly, with proper holding equipment and temperature logs, it's legal and safe. Done the way most of them actually do it, which is with overwhelmed staff and uncalibrated holding equipment and zero documentation, it means your freshly prepared order was cooked at 2 p.m. and arrived at your door at 7:30. At some point in that 5 hours, it spent time in the danger zone. You just don't know how much. A former employee at a high-volume delivery kitchen described the staging area during peak hours as a shelf with containers lined up, no temperature labels, no monitoring. Just waiting. When the driver came, whoever was nearest grabbed the next container in line. First in, first out? Sometimes. Depended on whether the person packing remembered. Usually, nobody was checking. The food that sat longest was the food most likely to go out to someone who'd been waiting the longest, because long waiting orders got priority dispatch. The platform showed you the order was being prepared. That notification fires when the restaurant accepts the order in the app, not when they start cooking, not when food reaches temperature, when they tap a button. What to do? Touch the container before you open it. Not gently. Press your palm to the side. Food that should be hot should be uncomfortable to hold for more than a second or two. Lukewarm isn't acceptable, and it isn't bad luck. It's a kitchen telling you exactly what it thought of your order. If you eat it anyway, that's your call, but make it an informed call, not a shrug. Red flag 3. Sloppy sealing, leaks, or containers that look opened and reclosed.
Look at the seal before you break it. Not a glance, actually look. The seam where the top meets the container, is it uniform all the way around, or does one side sit differently than the other? The foil seal, is it smooth and consistent, or does it have a crinkle pattern that doesn't match a seal that was applied once? The sticker across the top of the bag, does one edge have the slightly lifted, re-adhered texture of something that was peeled up and put back down? Most people have never looked, which is why this works. Because here's what that inconsistent seal is. It's the physical record of a decision someone made about whether to throw your food away. Delivery kitchens are under relentless pressure to reduce waste. Every container that gets tossed is a direct hit to margin. So when food sits too long, when an order gets recalled before pickup, when something gets contaminated at the assembly stage, the correct action is to discard it. The financially convenient action is to put it back in a new container, apply a fresh seal, and send it out to whoever's next in the queue. A poorly resealed container is what happens when someone does the second thing and doesn't do it cleanly enough. This isn't speculation. Multiple documented cases of food repacking have come from delivery workers who later reported it, usually after they left or got fired. The incentive structure is explicit. Kitchens that reduce food waste hit bonuses. Kitchens that hit waste targets get better placement in the app algorithm. The app gives preferential ranking to kitchens that fulfill orders quickly and completely. The fastest way to fulfill an order that might otherwise get wasted is to reseal it. The tamper-evident seal exists explicitly because of this problem. It's supposed to tell you this container has not been opened since it left the kitchen. When that seal looks
Wrong. It has failed its only job. Whatever story the app is telling you about this order, fresh, made to order, prepared with care, the seal is telling a different story. The seal is the truth. What to do? If the seal looks like it was applied more than once, and you'll know because it looks different from a seal applied confidently once by someone who does it hundreds of times per shift, don't talk yourself out of it. You're not being paranoid. You're being the only quality control that actually exists in this transaction. Red flag 4. Missing napkins, utensils, or sauces on an otherwise complete order. This is the one people dismiss immediately. They forgot the ranch. Annoying, but whatever. Keep dismissing it. That's exactly what they're counting on. Missing items from a delivery order are not a logistics problem. They are a staffing problem. And staffing problems in kitchens are not contained. They don't stay limited to the napkin dispenser. They spread to every task that requires attention, including the tasks that determine whether your food is safe to eat. Here's the chain. A kitchen that consistently sends incomplete orders is a kitchen where the person packing is also doing at least 3 other jobs simultaneously: taking orders, running the grill, managing multiple delivery apps, answering the phone. 2 people covering a shift that should have 5. And that kitchen is in this state not because of a bad week, but because the ownership made a deliberate calculation that 2 people covering 5 positions was an acceptable operating cost. They made that decision before your order came in. They'll make it again tomorrow. The missing ranch is the visible edge of that calculation. The invisible part, the part that doesn't show up in your order summary, is that the same distraction and overload that forgot your sauce is also the distraction and overload that skipped the hand wash between the raw chicken station and the assembly station. That can't multitask into safety. It cut corners on your sauce because it's cutting corners everywhere. The sauce is just the only corner you can see. Chefs who've worked under those conditions are blunt about this. The nights when orders went out wrong and incomplete were the same nights when everything else was wrong too. Nobody was monitoring temperatures. Nobody was swapping cutting boards. The sanitizer bucket hadn't been refreshed since opening. Not because anyone decided to be careless, because there was no time to be careful. 2 people cannot simultaneously be careful and survive a Friday dinner rush. What to do? Track your order accuracy across deliveries from the same kitchen. 1 missing item is noise. 3 out of 5 orders missing something is signal. It means this kitchen is structurally under-resourced, and that under-resourcing doesn't stay in the packaging area. Red flag 5.
excess grease pooling in the box or on the lid. Open the container, look at the inside of the lid. Condensation is normal. A thin layer of oil from the food itself is normal. What is not normal is a visible pool of grease sitting at the lowest point of the lid or a quarter-inch of liquid fat at the bottom of a container that holds something that is not a soup. That grease came from somewhere specific, and where it came from tells you exactly how that kitchen operates. Commercial fryers work like this. Clean oil at the correct temperature produces food with a specific, bounded amount of surface fat. The food absorbs what it absorbs during proper cook time, releases a natural amount during cooling, and arrives with grease present but not excessive. When you're getting a grease pool, one of two things happened, and both of them are problems. The first is oil degradation. Fry oil has a useful life. It has to be monitored for breakdown using test strips, skimmed of debris regularly, and replaced on a schedule. Used-up oil is darker, thicker, and transfers significantly more fat into food. It also produces compounds during cooking that have no business being in anyone's meal. Kitchens that monitor their oil properly don't send you containers full of pooled grease. Kitchens that run oil until it turns the color of motor fuel do. The second is temperature failure. Food cooked at incorrect temperatures, too low, absorbs far more fat than properly cooked food because the surface never forms the crust that acts as a barrier. Undercooked and over-greasy are the same failure. The grease pool in your container is the evidence. Here's what makes this matter beyond your arteries. Chronic grease buildup is one of the primary documented contributors to pest infestation. Inspectors who've investigated the worst kitchen violations, rat infestations, cockroach colonies in walls, consistently describe grease accumulation as a precondition. Grease that pools in containers is grease that accumulates on every surface in that kitchen, behind the fryers, under the equipment, in the drainage system. Roaches don't appear randomly. They appear where there's a consistent food source. Excess grease in your container means that kitchen is providing that food source around the clock. The kitchen that sends you a grease pool is the kitchen that has roaches. Maybe not every time, but the correlation in inspection records is not subtle. What to do? One greasy container from a new order is data. 3 greasy containers from the same kitchen over multiple orders is a pattern. Pattern means the fryer management is systematically wrong. At that point, you're not just receiving bad food, you're receiving food produced by a kitchen that has normalized the conditions that create pest problems.
Red flag 6. Burnt, soggy, or oddly stale smelling food. Trust the smell. Stop second-guessing the smell. You open the container and something was wrong. Not great, wrong. A flat, stale undertone that doesn't match what the food should smell like, or a faint odor of something that's been warm too long, or a sourness that shouldn't be there. And you told yourself you were imagining it because you were hungry and the food looked okay. Your nose was not imagining it. Your nose evolved specifically to detect volatile compounds released by bacterial decomposition. It does this automatically and accurately. It cannot be fooled by good photography or a high rating on a delivery app. When food smells wrong, the food is wrong. Not might be wrong, is wrong. Now let's talk about the other two, burnt and soggy, because both of them are pointing at something specific, and it's not what most people think. Burnt delivery food is almost never the result of a cook who wasn't paying attention. It's the result of a cook who was paying attention to 6 other things simultaneously and couldn't get back to yours in time. That's an understaffing and overload problem. It means that kitchen is running at a pace where the person responsible for your food genuinely could not monitor it. And a cook who couldn't monitor the cook time was also a cook who couldn't monitor the temperature of the protein before it went in the container, couldn't verify the cross-contamination protocol at the prep station, couldn't do any of the invisible things that keep your food safe because they were trying to keep 12 tickets moving at once, and something had to give. What gave was your food, and the things that gave before your food arrived at your door don't leave burn marks. Soggy food tells a different story. Not food that travels soggy, crispy things that got steamed in a closed container during transit. That's physics and partially unavoidable. Soggy food that arrives already soft without the texture it should have had when it was fresh. That's holding time. That's food cooked at 4 p.m., sitting in a staging area until 7:30 p.m., and being sent out to you because sending it out costs nothing and discarding it costs something. The sogginess is the biological record of how long it sat. You are eating a timestamp. What to do? If the smell is wrong, stop. Not take a bite to see, stop. There is no scenario in which food that smells wrong is fine to eat. The smell is not in your head, it is in the food. Photograph it, report it, and eat something else. This is the one flag where acting after the fact, after you've already eaten it, is too late. Other flags demand moderate response. Smell flags demand zero tolerance. Red flag 7. Food that looks thrown together instead of freshly assembled. You know the difference. You've seen it.
One container comes in and the food is arranged like someone was at least present during the process. The components are identifiable. It looks like someone touched it with intent. Another container opens and everything has been dropped in. Ingredients overlapping things they shouldn't be overlapping, components buried under things that will make them inedible. The whole thing assembled by someone who was thinking about the next 12 tickets while packing this one. The industry's line is that presentation doesn't matter for delivery. Food is food. What matters is the taste. This is a perfectly constructed justification for a process that stopped caring about quality control while simultaneously saving money by abandoning it. Here's what thrown together actually maps to. Every time a delivery kitchen is operating one app, one concept, one menu, and the person packing knows that menu, has packed it 100 times, has developed the reflex memory for which container gets which component in which order, the food looks assembled. Not pretty, assembled. Because the person packing it has the mental bandwidth to execute the task correctly. Every time that same kitchen is operating 4 delivery apps, 5 virtual brand concepts, sharing a kitchen with 2 other ghost kitchen tenants, with 2 people running the entire floor, the food looks thrown together because the person packing it is making 17 micro decisions per minute, and assembly sequence is the one that gets dropped. They grab, they pour, they fold the lid, they move. And here's what happens inside the container when assembly sequence gets dropped. Cold components get buried under hot protein and spend the next 40 minutes at a temperature that accelerates bacterial growth. Ingredients that should stay separated get mixed, and if there are any allergen considerations in your order, that separation was the entire point of your instructions. The structural integrity of the dish, which exists for food safety reasons as much as palatability reasons, collapses. The food looks thrown together because it was thrown together by someone doing too much with too little, because someone in a boardroom decided that staffing ratio was acceptable, in a kitchen operating 4 brand identities out of a single space with shared prep surfaces and no dedicated allergen protocol. You paid for the artisan brand with the nice photography. You received the ghost kitchen that operates that brand alongside 17 others in a kitchen you've never seen, staffed by people being paid to work faster than it's safe to work. What to do? Compare what you received to what the menu photo showed, not for aesthetics, but for assembly logic. If the structure of the dish makes no sense, hot things buried under cold things, components mixed that shouldn't be mixed, that's a food safety concern, not a presentation complaint. Report it as such. Red flag 8. Long wait followed by food that arrives suspiciously fast. This is the one nobody talks about, and it's the one that tells you the most specific thing about what happened to your food. Here's the scenario. You placed the order. The app estimated 35 to 45 minutes. You waited 40 minutes, 50 minutes. The preparing your order notification hasn't moved. You're ready to cancel. And then, instantly, the driver is 5 minutes out, 3 minutes out, at your door with the food somehow immediately ready. You were relieved. Food is here. Problem solved. That relief is exactly how they want this to land, because what actually happened in that kitchen is one of 3 things, and none of them are good. The most common, your food was made hours ago. It was batch cooked at the start of service, held in staging, and dispatched to whoever had been waiting the longest because long waiting orders generate cancellations and bad ratings, and cancellations and bad ratings affect app placement. The 50-minute wait wasn't your food being prepared, it was your food sitting in a warmer while the system waited for a driver to become available. The instant arrival wasn't efficiency, it was a warehouse running fulfillment on pre-cooked inventory and calling it fresh. During that holding time, however long it was, and you have no way of knowing, that food needed to stay above 140 degrees. Whether it did depends entirely on whether that kitchen has functioning holding equipment and someone monitoring it. In high-volume delivery kitchens running on thin margins with skeleton crews, those are both significant variables. The staging shelf is not always a monitored warmer. Sometimes it's a shelf. The second scenario, your food was rushed. The kitchen was backlogged, your order got delayed, and when they finally got to it, the ticket time was already embarrassing and they cooked it fast. Fast means high heat. High heat on protein means charred outside, undercooked inside. Chicken that was cooked in half the time it needed isn't just low quality, it's a specific food safety failure. The inside temperature that matters, 165 degrees internal for poultry, requires time as well as heat. Rushing the process does not guarantee that temperature was reached uniformly throughout the protein. The third scenario, least common, most concerning, your food had a problem. Something was wrong with the first version of your order. It sat too long, it got contaminated at the assembly stage, there was an error. The correct response is to discard it and start over. The economically convenient response is to repack it, apply a fresh seal, and move it out the door to clear the ticket. The timing pattern is the only window you have into all three scenarios. You cannot access the temperature logs. You cannot see the staging area. You cannot know how long that container sat before the driver picked it up, but you can see that your order showed no movement for 45 minutes and then resolved in 90 seconds. The gap between the preparation timeline and the dispatch timeline is telling you something real. What to do, watch the timing, not just the total wait. If the being prepared status was stalled and then the driver appeared immediately, touch the container the moment it arrives. If food that should be hot is lukewarm or worse, room temperature, the timing pattern just told you exactly why. You have every right to report it and every right to refuse it. The app will refund an order reported as incorrect temperature. Most people don't know that. Now you do. Here's what the delivery industry is betting on every single night. They're betting that you're tired, that you're hungry, that the food smells close enough to fine, that you'll tell yourself you're probably overthinking it, that the shrug you gave last time means you'll shrug this time too. They've built a billion-dollar business on that shrug. The 8 things you now know how to look for are not theories. They are the same signals that health inspectors look for when they walk into a kitchen they've received complaints about. They are the same things ex-line cooks describe when they talk about the kitchens they left because they couldn't keep working there with a clear conscience. They don't show up in ratings. They don't trigger platform enforcement. They survive indefinitely until someone at the end of the chain, the person holding the bag, decides to look. That's you. That's always been you. The platform was never going to protect you. The rating system was never going to protect you. The inspection cycle that visits most delivery kitchens once a year, maybe, was never going to protect you. You are the inspection. Every time you photograph a dirty container and report it, you're creating a record. Every time you flag an order that arrived at the wrong temperature, you're creating a record. Enough records from the same kitchen get reviewed. Reviews lead to enforcement. Enforcement leads to closures. Kitchens that would have kept operating, would have kept sending contaminated food to people who assumed the shrug was the right move, get shut down. 1 report does nothing. 10 reports from 10 different people do something. You don't know who the other 9 people are, but they exist, and they're waiting to see if anyone else noticed. You noticed. Now do something about it.